from Missouri, the home of the Stanley Cup champions. It pains me to say that, Ms. Wagner.
I thank the chairman. You know I did not bring up the fact that my St. Louis Blues are, in fact, the NHL Cup winners, but over a certain Bruins team of Massachusetts. But very kind of you to acknowledge it, Mr. Chairman, very kind. And I thank you for organizing this hearing, and I thank you to our witnesses. Russia's capabilities in the information space cannot be underestimated. Russian disinformation activities run counter to our U.S. values and our interests, and we must prioritize efforts to counter Russian information warfare in coordination with our transatlantic partners. Mr. Kalinsky, you mentioned Russia's attempts to, you said, launder information in order to obscure its source. What can the intelligence communities in the United States and Europe do to improve attribution, so to speak?
I think for that it's actually very useful if you have the first part of the four solutions I offered, and that's actually documenting the threat, because then you can always highlight that it was the Russian information space where the disinformation appeared. I come from a country where we have quite a pro-Kremlin president, and when the attack in Salisbury happened, the Russians tried to spread multiple versions, often contradicting about the story. You could see it after the murder of Boris Nemtsov, after shooting down MH17, and it was the same after Salisbury. You try to spread contradicting versions of events because the aim is not to persuade you about one version, but precisely so, as Dr. Kagan said, so that you end up like saying, I don't know where the truth is. And one of the versions was that it was not only Russia who was the producer of Novichok, the poison that was used there, but it was also Czech Republic. Mm-hmm. The Czech president was one of the first people to repeat that piece of disinformation. Suddenly you would see the Russian disinformation machine not saying it was us inventing the lie in the first place, but it was, as even the Czech president admitted, the Czechs produced Novichok. The information was laundered. You have to monitor the information space very accurately so that you can say that actually no, it was the Russians who came with the lie in the first place. We know it, and whoever parrots it is just multiplying Russian lie and is playing a useful idiot for the Russian disinformation machine. I think that's why we also need to be a bit more resolute in punishing the information aggressors. We have to call them out. We have to call out when someone acts as a useful idiot of Russian disinformation campaign and parrots its lies.
Absolutely. Dr. Kagan, I agree that the United States needs to develop new structures and strategies to identify, expose, and disrupt these hybrid operations. This must include coordination with our NATO allies. How should the U.S. approach the development of a coherent, NATO-based response to hybrid threats?
Thank you, ma'am. It is important for us to do as much of this work as possible at the unclassified level and probably not in the intelligence community. The intelligence community...
Again, the sunlight, the transparency needs to be seen by all.
Exactly. And as soon as you do it in the IC, then it's classified, right, and so forth. In addition to that, I think if you're not aware of them, if you look into the restrictions on the IC's ability even to monitor publicly available information, a lot of people would be surprised at how hard it is for the IC to do that. So I think that this is something where governments need to facilitate interaction of civil society organizations. The computer algorithms to catch deep fakes are not going to be written by the government. They are being written by private industry, by individuals. The ability to track stories from one place to another, that's out there. It's a matter of encouraging the mobilization of civil society, and then what the government needs to do is to be, and the governments need to do, is to coordinate on our responses to these things. So what are we going to try to accomplish? We know that we've got the Russians cold on this, for example. Just pick any example you like. What are we going to do with that information to maximize the damage to the entire Russian disinformation campaign and to demonstrate to our own people that there is truth out there, that we can know what it is, and to defeat the who knows principle?
Thank you. The IC part of this, I think, is very, very important. Ms. Aro, in my very limited time, what lessons would should Western governments draw from Finland's programs to improve media literacy and public awareness regarding disinformation and influence operations, ma'am?
Well, first and foremost, of course, everyone needs to make university education free for everyone, as we have in Finland. But when that is not possible, then what was mentioned already before, the program of the Finnish government of training government officials to recognize and counter disinformation operations already at the very early stage in 2014 has been a good example. Also, journalistic community has started to train school kids on their free time. They just visit schools and tell what's facts and what's fiction and how you separate the two.
And how to find the truth. Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you, and thank you for your courage. Thank you all for being here today. I have gone past my time. I yield back to the chair. Thank you.